I struggled always to trust in the Lord. Sometimes we say that we trust in Him,
Right.
and it just comes out of our mouths, right? But a while back, Kenya said it to me. She said, "How is it that you think that you? How is it that you say that you trust God all the time, but somehow you're always working at 2, 3 in the morning?"
Like easily a $3,000 check.
Yeah,
Do you want me to
drop it.
drop a $3,000 check to finish an argument?
But wait a minute, you don't have time to pray?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Flipping Tables. What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of Flipping Tables. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Flipping Tables.
Welcome back to another episode of Flipping Tables. We're excited to have you guys back.
No, it's all right. I mean, everything you can do everything with coffee, right? So I'm good. I'm good. Yeah,
He's ready to go. He's got his might be hype.
Then somebody was. I'm assuming they were playing the shofar, and I was like, "What's going on?" Like,
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Flipping Tables. We are your co-host. I'm Javi.
And I'm Fern.
And we're so glad to have you guys back with us. We want to talk today about balancing life, right? We talk about our faith,
Yep.
right? Serving God. We also talk about our hustle, the grind, right? I'm in sales. You're in sales as well.
Sales, yeah. Different type of sales, but all sales.
Right? And if you know, you know.
Yep.
It's a 24/7
nonstop
gig. And then family, right? You have a wife, kids, have a girlfriend, friends, parents, and balancing all that. And sometimes, it's tough. Sometimes it's tough. Like you have one of those days every now and then where you're like, bruh, I just want to do me, or you just have to take a personal day, like because it's a lot of, especially us, we served in a lot of areas in church that take up a lot of times. We're always in meetings. We're always, I think we've mentioned that we always see each other. Yep. Like we see each other a lot,
3
right?
or 4 times a week.
3-4 times a week.
Sometimes more.
Yeah. And so it's a lot. So we want to talk about that today, and we're gonna just jump into it. We're gonna
one of the things that we're looking at is it's a stat, right, that we pulled up. It says over 60% of Americans say that they feel too busy to enjoy their life. And one of the focuses that we want to focus on, right, is like what happens when the grind starts to drown out God. And it's kind of like what you said. Sometimes you have so much going on, and sometimes it just falls into a routine. And I can speak for myself and even for my wife, sometimes we fall into the routine and we just start going through things. And it can get to the point where you almost feel like you don't have enough time to do everything you're supposed to do. And it can get overwhelming. But one of the most important things is to try and identify what it is that is good for you, what's bad for you, and then the ugly stuff, to find a way to separate all three of them. When you're trying to juggle work responsibilities with husband duties, with father duties, and at the same time you have to try and figure out how you're going to mentor, how you're going to preach, how you're going to teach, and then you start adding up all the stuff that you have to do. It really does take up all your time. For me, I've always struggled to, if I can say it this way, I struggled always to trust in the Lord. Sometimes we say that we trust in Him,
right,
and it just comes out of our mouths, right? But a while back, Kenya said it to me. She said, "How is it that you think that you? How is it that you say that you trust God all the time, but somehow you're always working at 2, 3 in the morning?" And she's like, "I don't see how you can say that you trust Him if, in fact, if you're not with us, you're like always going back to work." And finding time to rest was always a struggle for me. I want to say, like, I have one of those blessed sleep rituals, right? Where all I got to do is like sleep 4 or 5 hours and I can go right back to doing it again. And sometimes even that we take for granted, because we feel like we're kind of invincible in that sense. Like, oh, I'm going to regenerate all my energy and I'm good to go. But I've learned that having to balance things out is probably the most important thing, the priority in faith. So I want to kind of dive into that part, right? Because sometimes we want to tell folks how to do things, and we want to advise everyone on how to do them, and then yet we are sometimes struggling with it as well. And I feel like there's a lot of folks out there who are going to be struggling with parenting. You have people who are entrepreneurs. You have a lot of people working in ministry, and it's not like they hand you a manual. Mm-hmm. Oh, this is how you do it. Start making adjustments in your lifestyle so that it can become easy. And that's part of the one thing that I think sometimes we have to be able to speak out on and share, so that folks that are coming into ministry, they can see what it takes. Kind of like the mentality of like, you don't want to bite more than what you can chew, right? You end up choking on something.
Right. You want to set the right expectation for them too.
Yeah.
Right. Especially if, like, let's say the people that you're going to be helping and you're going to be coming under, right, to help.
Yeah.
If they've already set a standard or have a standard for what is expected or how you run things, not to say that you don't have creative ideas to improve, but you don't want to come in and lower that standard.
Yeah.
Right. Because you think you have, or because you have a different lifestyle, which is fine. Like, some people can do 2, 3, 4 things, at church, serve, or, handle different tasks. And then there's others that can only do 1 or 2 because they have other things to handle, which is fine, right? As long as you're serving God with all your heart, as long as, and that's something that, like I told you, like, as long as you're giving 100% in that one area.
Yeah.
That's the important thing. Mm-hmm. Like if you're an usher or if you're a teacher, as long as you're giving 100% in that area, that's fine. You don't need to be a teacher and a worship director and helping with the youth. And like, you don't need to be doing a bunch of stuff. Like,
and sometimes, I'm sorry to cut you off, but sometimes it's like, it's okay to do a lot of things, right? Yeah. And I'm not trying to discourage people from doing the most. It's important that you do it at a slow pace, that you get in. And it's kind of like riding a bike. When you're first riding a bike, all your focus is on riding that bike, and you're still going to fall. You're still going to crash into things. You're going to forget how to brake. You're going to forget how to do everything. But it gets to a point where weeks, months, whatever, years later, you don't even have to hold the handles anymore. You can ride without even holding the handles. Why? Because at that point you just have to practice. So now your focus can go on to other things that you're wanting to achieve. So I think, like, at least for me, when I talk to Kenny about everything that we've been doing, and I thank God, right, for where we're at. But when I started as a teacher coordinator for the preteens, it took a lot of structure. There was a lot of bumps in the road. But once I figured that part out and it started going smooth, then they added, hey, work with the high schoolers. I was like, all right, cool. But we use the same structure, start adding that on. And it was like, hey, young adults now. I was like, all right, we got it. And that's a process now where we're trying to get everything, getting the ball rolling and trying to structure that whole part to make sure that it's going well. But it's creciendo, como la luz de la aurora, right? It's like de aumento en aumento. And I think that's like the key, where you're adding on to stuff, but not necessarily trying to find a way to substitute things. I feel like sometimes we want to substitute our lifestyles and want to substitute the things that we do. But sometimes it's like, you have to be able to sacrifice and let go of things that are hindering what God wants to do in your life so that you can actually get to the next level. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I feel like sometimes, at least for me, there was times where I wanted to do everything. I wanted to go play ball and do everything 3-4 times a week. I wanted to go be in the worship practices, and I wanted to sing on Fridays and sing on Sundays. And then I wanted to teach on Thursdays, teach on Saturdays, go to classes on Mondays. And it's like you're spreading yourself thin. So it's about finding something that works for you and managing your time.
Yeah.
It's not everything's just about I want to be involved in everything. It's like you said, give 100% of whatever it is you choose to do, but give 100% in each thing that you're doing until everything becomes part of you, and it's just an extension of who you are and what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, to reiterate, right, you don't need to be doing 10 things. As long as you're doing one thing and you're doing it with excellence, I think, and you have the right heart posture,
Yeah.
that's where God is going to, that's what's going to please God ultimately, right? Because it's not how much you do, right? Because then you fall under that concept of I have to do certain things or I have to do a certain amount in order for God to be happy with me.
Yeah.
And I think also part of that too is like, if we have that mindset, then when we fall short, I'm not even talking about sinning. I'm just talking about like, I didn't pray today.
Yeah.
Or I didn't read my Bible today. Then that starts to affect you because you're like, I'm not doing right because I didn't get to pray.
Yeah.
Right. Which I'm not saying like don't pray. Of course, find time to pray.
Yeah.
But we all fall victim to that because we're busy people. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I realize like I'm a homebody. I like to be at home, but I'm rarely home. Right.
Yeah.
I forgot who I was talking to this the other day. Sunday we did a cookout for Mother's Day. And I was telling my sister-in-law's mom, because she was like, "Oh, Javi, like you stopped going on Monday nights to church for like the discipuladores." I'm like, "Yeah, it was just too much." Like I was like, I play soccer on Monday nights, but I was like, it just got too much. Like I do this on Monday, I do this on Tuesday, I do this on Wednesday, I do this on Thursdays, I do this on Friday, I do this on Saturday, and I do this on Sunday, and then repeat again.
Yeah.
So then it's like, when do you have your own time?
Yeah.
Right. And which is, it's key, right? Like it's needed to have a balance. And it's hard because again, we kind of how I started, we're in sales. And if you know, like your phone rings,
Yep.
you got to pick up. I remember when I first started in real estate, there's this one guy, he was a good sales, like he was a good realtor. And his wife, I remember she told me like, we can be in the middle of an argument and his phone rings, he's picking up. And that used to drive me crazy. And I'd be like, why are you answering the phone? He's like, this is like easily a $3,000 check.
Yeah.
Do you want me to
drop
a $3,000 check to finish an argument? Or do you want me to take this $3,000 check? And then she's like, then I started realizing like, that's true. He has to answer. And so she was like, we put our argument on pause so he could take take the call and then we get right back.
Yeah.
So, but it's a balance, right? Like I sometimes people are calling me mid church service or on Fridays. Like even my boss would be hitting me up on Friday at like 8 and I'm on the drums and I have my phone there, right? Cause I have the volume stuff and I have to decline that jump. Or sometimes, like if I get a quick little chance, I'll text him a picture that I'm literally on the drum set, bro, like in the middle of a service, and he'd be like, "Oh, my bad, bro." Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't call me, bro. Like, don't call me, because it's not that I don't want to work. It's not that I don't want to take your calls. I'm doing something else right now that has priority, and we all fall victim. Like I was thinking about this earlier, and like even a couple days now in a row where I'm like, I haven't been as faithful in reading my word as I was.
Yeah.
Right. Because of, it could just be distractions, being lazy, being busy with work. Thank God, like I'm busier than I was last year. And thank God it looks like, things are going to be better this year than last year. But last year I had more time to like just wake up, be in my word. And before I knew it, it's an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I was like, dang. And I was like, just taking my time reading, taking notes. This year, I haven't been as consistent.
Yeah.
You know, I might do it once, and then like 2 weeks later, I'll do it again. Whereas before, it was like every day, boom, boom, boom. You know, and like I don't have that where it's like I feel guilty for not doing it.
Yeah.
Right, where it's like, oh, like I'm not being convicted by the Holy Spirit. Like you're not reading your word. You're being a bad Christian. But I do see it where I'm like, man, like what revelations am I getting? Like, what is the Holy Spirit, you know, trying to show me? Am I growing or am I not growing spiritually?
Yeah.
Right? Am I staying the same? Should I be at a different level now? Like you said, talk about like leveling up. Like, where would I be if I was consistent enough? Right. But because there's other, like now the scale isn't tilted this way, it's tilted the other way, where it's like now I'm more busy with work.
Yeah.
Now I'm in a relationship. So now that takes time. Right. Where, you know, maybe you at least have to see each other once a week.
Yeah.
Right? Because that other person misses you, because you miss them, because you want to spend time with them. So, and it's not just meeting up for an hour. You know, it's like you got to meet up for a couple hours.
You have to make the right time.
You have to make time. And so sometimes it's like, all right, I can't schedule any appointments because I'm going to go out with my girl, or I have church, you know. So it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, it's not easy.
I think you hit on a couple of points that I think are really important, because that's also going to be a controversial one, right? Where people say, well, wait a minute, you don't have time to pray. As a matter of fact, I'm one that the moment I heard you say it, I'm like, man, I think that it's important for us to learn to prioritize one thing over the other.
Right.
Right. And for me, it's like, I think I shared this in a couple of other podcasts as well, where I said it's getting to the point where if I can't make time to have a devotional early in the morning, then let me make time during the day.
Mm-hmm.
The moment I walk out of my office, I pray. When I get to, when I'm about to arrive to my appointment, I pray. When I walk out, I thank God for the opportunity. I get to the next one, I pray again. I walk out of that and I thank God for the opportunity. I think it's important for us to learn to make what we do and how we do it part of our daily lifestyle.
Yeah.
Where we don't make it seem like prayer is something that's separate that I have to go check off the box. You know, when you fall into that, it makes it even harder for you. For me, I was thinking around when you said that, is like, even sometimes the work that we have, or even serving, can sometimes take priority over our relationship with God.
Right.
And I think that me saying like, oh, I don't get on my knees and pray for 2 hours every night, or 1 hour, doesn't mean that I don't pray with and communicate with God all day long. So I do think that it's important to have that communication. I think it has to be priority. Relationship is priority. Just like you mentioned, it's important for us to make, for me, it's important to make time with my spouse, right? I have to be able to spend time with my wife on a daily basis. I have to connect with her. Right now, you're in a dating phase. So for you to do it, you know, to be able to see her at least once a week, twice a week, that's priority to you. To me, I see my wife every day. So it's not whether I get to see her or not. It's how do I connect with her on a daily basis.
When you do see her.
When I do see her, you know what I'm saying? Because if it's just the kids and it's like, oh, you take the kids, I'll pick them up, you drop them off, and we're just moving around, it's not the same as, hey, let's sit down, let's get a cup of coffee, let's connect, let's see where you're at, you know. Yeah. And I want to say, like, and there's something that I want to share is like, when you stop doing that, like, I'll just put it this way. When I wasn't doing it with my wife, I saw my wife get overwhelmed. And this is a quick one, right? Because my wife, when she started working earlier this year, she decided that she was going to take a big break. She took a long break from ministry and serving because she was overwhelmed. especially with like all of the events that we had last year with Agape and everything, and then all of a sudden seeing everything starting to ramp up again, and she had to go to work, that made it so difficult for her. And I came to a realization that I wasn't doing my part in checking up on her and making sure that she was okay with everything that she had going on. As a matter of fact, the time that she took off is when where I really came to realize how much she was actually doing. The weight that she carried that I'd never even noticed that she was carrying, because she made it look like it was easy. And I can relate to that because I'm going to just say it like it is, right? At work, I carry the team, when it comes to the sales. And everyone assumes that it's an easy thing that, anyone can do this then, But all of a sudden they get out there and they try and they're like, oh, snap, not everyone can do this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because I have years of experience, I have years of knowledge, and I have years of falling flat on my face until I got it right. I've learned to do it. And it takes a lot of hard times, if you will, before you can get good, So having said that, she made it look easy all the time. And it wasn't until she stepped away that I was like, oh my goodness, like this is a lot. And it started getting overwhelming for me. So at that point, it's like, all right, now I see what she's doing. And I see the type of time that she's putting in. And I'm like, I'm aware of it. And just talking to her and acknowledging everything, again, weeks of going back and forth, it has been important for us to find a balance, because even serving itself can sometimes isolate yourself and get to the point where all you're doing is putting in work. We see a sample of Martha and Mary in Scripture, right, in the book of Luke, and it just goes to show that Martha was always so busy just trying to keep up with everything she had to do that she would even complain that Mary wasn't doing nothing.
Yeah, she wasn't helping.
But she was missing out on the best part, which was to be at the feet of Jesus, which was to be there, to receive, to listen to his voice, to listen to his teachings, and to take it all in, right? And I feel like that's what I saw happening in Kenya, but I didn't realize that at the same time it was happening to me, right? So it wasn't until like I saw it reflect in her that I was like, oh snap, I got to make sure that I don't fall into the same thing, right? Because now that she was stepping out, I'm like, okay, now I got to pull the weight. Now I got to carry it. And let's call it what it is. I didn't do half as good a job as she did. You know what I'm saying? Like I let's just say like I value everything she does. You know what I'm saying? Because I came to a realization that she makes it look easy. And she does so much. She's a different. They say that we're one, right? Let's just say that we don't have the same. We're not the same. She's the creative side. She's a grinder. She has a lot of energy, and she can put in work. And it's not until like she's exhausted that you can tell, okay, she's giving it all she got. Whereas for me, I look like I'm giving it steady. It's a steady race for me, you know what I'm saying? But all that to say is that it's important for us to make sure that we are paying attention to what we're doing and not allowing our service, our work, our kids, our goals to get in the way of what's really important, which is to stay connected to God, which is to be in contact with him and to be in his presence.
And I think that's a good example, right? Because I think I've mentioned this before, where it's like, even in the good things, like the example that you gave of Martha, she was doing something good. Like she was trying to make sure that the food was going to be ready.
She's being a good host.
Right. So it wasn't that she was wasting her time, like doing something else. And that it happens in every aspect. Like if I'm on Alabanza that Sunday, right? I'm in church, I'm serving, I'm playing the drums, and I get down. I'm like, I did my part.
Yeah.
I did what I came to do. I sit down, I zone out until it's time for me to go back up.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I'm not filling myself up either.
Yeah.
So the only time I'm filling myself up is when I'm not serving. So I had to ask myself that, like, when are you actually going to be filling yourself up too?
Gotta check yourself.
Right. So it happens to us too. Like even for the teachers, the helpers that, they sit in class, but are they really paying attention?
Yeah.
Or are they just there so that they're not sitting in the service? Right.
Yeah.
And it's a balance. I'm not saying that, we could just go to church or don't show up to work because you're going to be praying all day. And it's a balance. You can't do that either.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can't just take every day off because you're going to be reading your Bible or you're going to be going to church and praying there. And it's a balance, right? Like God gave you certain talents, God gave you certain gifts and skills so that you can put them to use
Yeah.
and trust them, right? Like I was thinking that again, like it's been on my mind because I'm like, man, I'm not doing as much of my devotional as I would love to do or as I did before, but work is going good. And I was doing like a bunch of my devotionals because I had more time because work was slow. And I was like, man, God, like, please make it get better. Please let it get better. Right. Like, and I'm like, all right, it worked. Like he's blessing me, but that also is taking time. It's like taking um my attention away from spending time with him.
Yeah.
So I also need to start like looking at, okay, what am I doing that's taking time that like, where am I wasting my time?
Yeah.
It's me scrolling through TikTok and Instagram, taking time away. Like, how can I be more effective? As to where like I can save myself 20, 30 minutes here and another 5 here where I can have time to do a devotional.
Yeah.
It might not be the hour and a half that I had, but I still have time to do it. Right. And if I do it, like we said, do that one thing with excellence, then that's going to pay off.
And I think it's important, right, to know that to have priorities over productivity. One of the notes that we have here is like God first doesn't necessarily mean that it's only God, right? And I think that's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
But it is important for us to make God the center of everything that we do, which is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the more important part. And learning to involve everyone and everything around you to incorporate it as part of your life, right? So it's just like you said, like knowing where to cut time out and everything and where to spend time. I can say it like this. For me, is like even when I'm studying scripture to prepare, whether it's for a Saturday Bible study or whether it's just to have my own thing. One of my favorite part has been to actually do it like in the kitchen. Not necessarily because I need my family to see, but I find it that Mateus will come by and be like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you studying? What are you reading?" And I'll briefly tell him. He's like, "Oh, okay, cool," and he just leaves. Daniel, on the other hand, if he comes up, he'll sit down and talk to me. And I've said this before, where sometimes it's not that I'm learning something new, but he makes me look at it from a different point of view. You know what I'm saying? Like he'll just say something random, and I'm like, "Well, I didn't think about that, but that makes sense."
No.
And I'll start digging in to look at it a little bit further into that, and you come up with some really cool stuff. But making everything that you're doing, or whatever it is that we're doing, like if we're doing it for God, and even when it comes to work, and I said this earlier, right? Like even when it comes to work, I'm praying, that I don't fall into the mindset where all I want to do, because I'm in sales, I'm going to go in there and just sell and get money. That's not what I want. Let me go in there. Let me find a solution. Let me help these folks. And I find that whenever I've had that mentality, I see a little bit more production, if you will. So I think it's just a matter of staying on our toes and really having that balance, bro. Because it all goes back to what you said, right? Finding out that balance, and then I think the resting. And I think that's the hardest part. Even till now, I think even though I've gotten a lot better, it's probably still my biggest struggle. Finding out when to rest, how often to rest, because I think like you mentioned, the scrolling part. Everyone falls into that.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there was like 2 days ago, it was on Sunday, where I took a nap during the day, which I never really nap, right? But it was one of those naps where you just kind of pass out.
Mm.
And I woke up, went to my in-laws, came back, and I couldn't fall asleep. But once I started like scrolling, stopped. But then I started reading something, this article, and all of a sudden I find myself like dropping the phone. And it's like, how is it that if I wasn't tired, but all of a sudden I am tired, and all of a sudden I'm passing out and I'm dropping the phone? It almost hit my face. It hit me in the shoulder, right? And I was like, why didn't I just go to sleep like an hour ago? And I look at the time, and it's like 1:45 in the morning. I was like, what am I doing? You know?
Yeah.
But it's like sometimes even little things like that where you're just like, I'm playing myself. And it's like, I could have used this rest. I needed this rest.
Yeah.
And now this rest is going to like make me drag myself the rest of the week because I missed out on it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, sometimes you don't even realize when you're slipping. And it's about having that structure. It's about reminding yourself of what needs to be done and then getting it done. I feel like that's sometimes the biggest part of it.
I think also like the importance of the whole balance, right? Because we're talking about God, we're talking about family, and we're talking about grind, hustle. Like having that balance brings certain peace that at the end of the day we're all looking for.
Yeah.
We're all looking for a peace, right? Like some people, that's why they hustle so hard. They grind so hard because they had it rough and they're like, I don't want my kids to go through this, or I don't want to have to wonder like where my next meal is going to come from.
Yep.
So they're hustling because they don't have that inner peace. Even millionaires, right? Like, why do they still hustle so hard? Like, and I ask myself that because I love sleep.
Yeah.
Like I need to get my 7-8 hours of rest. Like, if not, I'm gonna be like, bro, what? Right? But like, even it's very often for like millionaires or like people that are wealthy to say like, yeah, I only need 4 or 5 hours of sleep every night.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Yeah.
Because all they do is hustle. All they do is hustle. And so even at the same time, like, I think it's that piece that we're looking for. And when we get off balance, like when one thing is when you start to tilt the scale, in favor of one other thing more than the other,
Yeah.
you start to lack in some the other area, right?
Yeah.
So if you're paying attention more to God and the grind, you're like pushing your family off.
Yeah.
Or if you're paying attention more to your family and God, then the grind is taking a hit.
Yeah.
If you're paying attention to your family and the grind, then God is taking it. So it's like, that's the hard part, and that's what we have to work on. And I think what happens is we start to, like, I've noticed, me personally, is like when I'm too busy with work and church, I rarely see my mom.
Mm.
Right? I rarely talk to my dad. Right? I see my brother because we're at church.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I might not see my mom when I get home because she's already asleep. And then she leaves before I wake up to go to work. So like, I don't really see her. So there's no communication. Or the arguments are just, or conversations might turn into arguments quicker.
Yeah.
Or just, stuff like that, where it's like, you're very snappy, especially because, in sales and real estate, like, there's so many ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one day, like, it just happened to me this week where, like, I think it was actually last week, where, like, on a Tuesday, had a client ready to go. Like, he was actually under contract. And then the place he was buying had a bunch of violations. The seller did work, didn't pull permits. And so it was just this big mess, bro. Like, it was just way too complicated, right? So we released. We're like, you still down to search? Yeah. Find him another place, submit the offer. 2 days later, he's like, hey, man, I'll put my search on pause. after we submitted another offer, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give him the weekend, let him think about it, come back to him after I hear back from the offer he submitted, and see if whether I can kind of corner him a little bit, be like, all right, bro, like, you know.
Yeah.
So I talked to him last night, and then he was like, yeah, man, I'm just not in the position anymore. Like, whole time I'm thinking, like, if we would just closed on the first house, I would have been got paid, you know? But there's so many highs where it's like, bro, he's good. Like, we're submitting again. And then there's so many lows where it's like, dang, I just lost a client for a year and a half, a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Like, when is he ever going to come back around? Or I have to wait another year to see him. Like, so it's, but luckily, because like I know you talked about trusting in God, right? Like, I'm not stressed where I'm like, that's my only deal, right?
Yeah.
So thank God, like that's not my only deal. So I'm like, all right, like I still have a couple more clients that I got in the pipeline that are ready to fall or they're already under contract. Where it's like, all right, like I know my paycheck is coming,
Yeah.
just not his, right?
Right. Exactly.
So, but now it's like you got to rebuild. But in sales, it's like when you don't have no movement for a couple of days, you feel it.
Yeah.
Like emotionally, you feel it mentally. Where you're like, bro, you start scrambling and you're like, yo, like I gotta get something. So it's I think it's like that's when you start to know like you lost that piece.
Yeah.
That piece that we're all searching for. And that's why we hustle so hard. And that's why we grind so hard. Like I don't hustle, and I know you don't hustle for your own self to make a name for yourself and be like, oh, I'm Fernando, I'm Javi, I'm CEO, and no, you hustle for your family.
Of course.
You hustle for your wife, for your kids, to give them what you didn't have. And so I think it's important to realize too, like how do you know when you're off balance is when you start to stress out, when you start to feel like you have to scramble to like, because I think in sales, it feels like you can't breathe, bro. Like you're like, oh, snap, where's my next lifeline?
You're getting suffocated from it.
Yeah.
And I like that because I would want to make those points, right? The three things that you can notice. One of them you mentioned is the distance that you feel from your own family. Number two is when you're not praying. And then number three, like you mentioned, is when you're getting short tempered. Like you mentioned, like that you get snappy. And sometimes that happens, right? And again, we normally don't see it until we're hurting people because we're so out of whack that it gets to the point where everyone else around us feels the weight that we're carrying because of the way that we're hurting everybody around us. And I think sometimes that's one of the most important things that you have to be aware of is that when you get to a point where you're out of balance and all you're doing is you are always rushing, you're always in a hurry, and you never get that rest that you need, that's what it leads to, right? And the book of Psalms 127:2 says, in vain you rise early and you stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those who he loves. And I think that's like the one thing that we have to remember, when scripture says, all of you who are heavy laden, heavy burden, come to me and I will give you rest. And sometimes we read it, we know it, we teach it, but it's like, when do you put it to work?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to put that to work.
Yeah, when does that become actual like rema in your life? It was crazy because this past weekend, Erica, pastor's wife, was preaching, and the message that she was bringing was really for mothers. But I'm not gonna lie, bro. Like I couldn't stop. I had tears running down my face almost the whole time. Because all the points that she was making, not that I'm a mother, right? But as a father, a lot of those things still affect because she's really addressing parents in general. She was basically addressing women, but the reality is that it affects all parents. And when you're put into a place of authority or a place of when you are, how to say this, spiritually speaking, right, where you're in charge of a bunch of people that you have to look at. It's a huge responsibility. And then all of it started dawning on me like, snap, like there's so much to grow, so much to do. And you think that because you are doing so much, all of a sudden you feel like you got it. All of a sudden, I'm listening to his preaching, and it's hitting home, and I'm like, oh snap! Like I'm playing myself. I got so much work that I got to do, but finding that balance and making a priority is something that we sometimes it just takes work, and it just takes you sitting down, writing down all the things that you have to do, and then just organizing yourself. Because if I'm honest with myself, I do spend way too much time relaxing, telling myself, well, I need to rest and I need to distract myself so that I don't get stressed out. And the truth of the matter is that all that time could be going towards actually resting and not just distracting myself, because distraction is not what we need. And
distraction is not rest.
Exactly. It's not the same thing. No. And sometimes we're like, well, I just want to get my mind off of this. Well, getting your mind off of what is productive and what's important so that you can just say, this is how I'm going to find rest, worst thing you can possibly do. And I think that we all kind of fall into that part. I think it's still important to find that rest and to understand that when you're resting and not doing much, there's no reason to feel guilty for it. Because sometimes when we don't feel guilt, when we feel guilty is one of the biggest mistakes that we can make, is assuming that because we're not being productive and we start panicking. Like you expect that pressure to be on you, but the moment you decide, well, now I'm going to rest, all of a sudden you start hitting that panic button. And I find that it's been something that I've struggled with a lot, and it's one of the biggest things that I need to work on, and it's one of the things that I continue to work on, is to know when to relax and when to put my foot in the gas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a nonstop learning curve for everyone because, at a certain extent, we're entrepreneurs, right? We're self-employed because we get to dictate with the sales how much we want to earn. If you don't put in no work, don't expect to earn much.
Exactly.
Right? So it's still a learning curve because imagine, like you told me recently, you had people that now you had to train. So now you have more responsibility on top of what you already have, which throws off the time and the effort and the balance that you already had. Yeah. Right? Like right now I'm dating, I'm in a relationship where last year I wasn't. So now that added something else to my plate. Imagine now when I get married and I have kids. Yeah. Now that's another area that I didn't have to put time into and effort into. Because right now I can say, like, for example, last night went to play soccer. Then I went to go play basketball. Got home, a little bit before 11. Took my time, showered, ate a snack, went to bed really late. But if I have a wife and I have kids,
you don't have that luxury.
I don't have that luxury. I can't sleep in just because I wanted to. Yeah. No, they have to go to school. Like you might have to drop them off, take them to the bus stop. So it's still gonna I think it's a learning curve. Like it's you just have to keep adapting because there's things that are gonna be thrown into your plate or sometimes taken off, right? Like you mentioned your wife took a break, which was good because she wasn't gonna get she was maybe already burnt out or didn't want to get burnt out. Yeah. And I think you hit something really big where it was don't feel guilty for taking a break or don't feel guilty for resting.
She didn't feel guilty. And if I call it what it is, I think she was already burned out, And I know for a fact she don't feel guilty right now. If anything, she feels like she got a whole lot of energy, and I learned from it, right?
Come back stronger.
I think exactly. I think she's. But she's.
All right, guys, we got a live audience.
But the truth of the matter is that she took that break, but it was much needed, And in a way, it's it factored in perfectly because I think I needed to wake up and see what was really going on. Kind of like what you said right now, when you have kids, you don't have that luxury. But guess what? I was taking on that luxury. I was sleeping in while she was putting all the kids to. So when she took that break, guess what? All of a sudden, she's like, "Hey, I'm going on a run. like handle the kids. And I'm like, hold on, what? And I'm like walking around like a zombie, like running around. And in how to say, it's like it woke me up. Like, hey, she does a lot, not just spiritually, not just in our relationship, but she does a lot with our children. She does a lot with like making sure that I'm consistently being productive, because she does all the little things that I don't have to do, that I don't have to worry about on a daily basis. But going back to it, right? It's just it's important to find that balance.
And I think that rest is also, I mean, you see it in the Bible, right? Where like the Pharisees, they were judging God for doing miracles on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Right. And they were trying to like judge him because he healed somebody on the Sabbath. And part of that, the Sabbath is holy.
Yeah.
Like it makes it holy because, and I think it holds a lot of weight. Like we go back to trusting God, and imagine if you work 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Or and even like in tithing, right? Like we learned that in tithing, like, bro, give God his portion.
Yeah.
And watch you still have enough. When you thought like how, like, you know, and there's endless people that have given me their personal testimonies, like, bro, like I looked at my check and I gave him, you know, I tithe, and some way, somehow
Still,
I made it through this month. Like it makes no sense how I'm paying my bills. It makes no sense how I'm able to go out and eat with my wife or whatever. Like, but if you give God what's his and you trust, like he's gonna provide, you know. And I've mentioned this before in the podcast earlier on in the beginning, like episodes where I was like, bro, sometimes I didn't have food to eat. Like I didn't bring lunch, and all of a sudden we had a meeting and somebody brought food.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't like what I wanted to eat.
Yep.
But at least I was like, dang, I got a free sandwich and some chips and a soda, or, you know, they order pizza or pasta, or like, you know, like at least he provided one way, you know, a different way than I would have expected. Right. So I think it's respecting that, trusting God, that like take the day, you know, or take some time to rest, spend it with your family, spend it with your wife, or whatever you guys got going on, you know. And I think it's special. It's especially important to communicate that, because like you mentioned something, or Kenya mentioned something where like you guys have a certain day where it's date night, right? And like, well, did you guys just start doing that now, or was it something that you did from the beginning? Like where did that kind of fall in?
And see, this is the crazy part, and this is why I say that it's important to do it, right? Because even the burnouts factored in to the fact that I wasn't even consistent with that, and everyone's gonna be like, "Ooh," but the truth is, like, there was times where sometimes she was like, "Oh, I'm too tired. I don't want to go out anymore," and we substituted the date night for just a rest night, you know. And then all of a sudden, I would be like, "Oh, I don't feel like going. I don't feel like doing this. We don't feel like doing that." And it got to a point where we were just like, "We're not going out. Let's just stay in." All of a sudden, we lose the habit. All of a sudden, I didn't prioritize it, and that's what I meant. Like when you start distancing yourself, right? I'm still seeing her on a daily basis, but the fact that I wasn't prioritizing it really affected our relationship. When she takes this pause, and I'm like, oh snap, I've been playing myself. So now it's something that we're trying to implement, and we're trying to make sure that we're going to prioritize it. Yeah. Why? Because this podcast cannot be a priority over my relationship,
right?
Not over my wife,
right?
You know, being given a class on a Saturday cannot be a priority over my relationship with my wife. If I'm not going to be right with her, how can I try and be right with everything else? You know, those kind of things are the stuff that we talk about when we say we have to prioritize and make sure that we're finding a balance with everything that we have to do.
I think it's you know, I think it's important to recognize that, you know, you're not failing as a person or as a believer. You're just overwhelmed, right? And then it's just about reevaluating, right? Taking a step back, sitting down, taking a breath, and just analyzing, right?
Yep.
Analyzing your life What are you doing? What did you have? Like, what did you have on your plate? Or what's on your plate now that you didn't have? Right? What is kind of throwing off your balance? And just realize like you're not a bad person because you didn't pray, because you're not doing this. Just again, it's just about starting little by little, step by step, where it's like before you wake up and pick up your phone and scroll through all the notifications you got, how about you pray for 2 minutes? You know, how about you pray for 5 minutes and let that start becoming a habit where then, you know, that's a habit where you're like, even if you didn't do it in the morning, you do it throughout the day. And I think it's, you know, and be intentional with your prayer time. Don't just babble on with thank you, thank you, thank you, or I want this, I want that. Like be intentional, right?
Yeah.
Pray for your peace. Pray for whether it's clarity and decisions that you have to make or the way you're living your life. You know, pray for guidance and ask God what you really want. If you want to get back on balance, ask God for better
that
balance.
Make that a priority in your prayer. Yeah, and more importantly, I would say after you pray, put it to work. Because believing and wanting something, it's not going to be anything unless you actually put work to it.
Yeah,
you know, write it down, schedule it, put it on your calendar, put reminders, and then actually get to work.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in for another one of our episodes. Thank you guys for always liking, commenting, and subscribing.
Yep.
Don't forget to like, share with a friend.
And hit that notification button to make sure that you guys get the new content as it comes out.
Deuces.